Are you ready to grow as a baker? In this video, I'm going to be sharing some practical tips for transitioning from using boxed baking mixes to baking from scratch. So if you're ready to take that leap, stay tuned because this video is definitely for you. The first thing I want to talk about is the reasoning behind transitioning from box mixes to scratch baking. The first reason has to do with growing as a baker. If you are using boxed mixes or have been using boxed mixes, the truth of the matter is that it's a much easier way to get to a final result. But in order to grow and build your skill set as a baker, you'll have to go outside of your comfort zone a bit. And that's where baking from scratch really helps you as you develop the skill. So to learn, to experiment, transitioning and making this transition may be a great option for you if you are getting bored with using box mixes. The next thing I'm going to mention has to do with pride. And so please do not come for me in the comments. I am just going to put it out there. There is a lot of pride that comes from knowing that you made something from scratch. It doesn't matter if you're baking or if you're cooking. You put the ingredients together, you made the combinations. It's the greatest thing ever. Here are my top tips for making the transition from box mix to baking from scratch. First thing that you want to do is get a really great baking book. And my absolute favorite book is the Better Baking Book by Kristen Hoffman. She's also known as Baker Betty. And you've heard me talk about this book in previous videos. This is my absolute favorite baking book. And that is because it is full of master recipes that anyone can use to start to build their own recipes. There are recipes in this book for cakes, pies, cookies, breads. Help just that, there are recipes also for frostings and fillings and ways to just kind of put everything together that really help you create a delicious result. So I would highly recommend picking up a baking book to help you as you get started on this journey. Next, if you're making this transition, you may want to do it slowly, and in doing so, you may decide that you want to try doctoring your box mix. And by doctoring, you are adding ingredients that are above and beyond an extra that are not listed on the packaging. A couple of ways that I have doctored, specifically cake mix in the past, is where it calls for 3 eggs, I may add an extra egg. Where it calls for water, I may choose to switch that out for milk instead. So if you're taking baby steps along this journey, doctoring your box mix could be an option for you. There's lots of ways in doing this, so I encourage you to definitely do some research and experiment, try some things and see what works best for you. When you are baking from scratch, you have to make sure that you have the right tools. Now, when you're using a box mix, there's a lot of extra work that is already done for you. You don't have to sift anything. You don't have to measure anything. You really only have to measure any of your wet ingredients and kind of add it into the bowl. So if you are baking from scratch, there are some tools that you are going to need going forward. First, you want to get a sifter. You also want to make sure that you have plenty of dry measuring cups on hand. And then going along with measuring, to be accurate, because baking is a science and it's a lot more accurate than cooking, and you have to have exact ingredients in many cases. A digital scale can help you do that. It can help you make sure you're measuring out your ingredients as accurately as possible. So I would recommend definitely picking up those 3 tools to start. Also, when you're baking from scratch, you have to make sure there are some very specific ingredients that you have on hand in your pantry at all times. These are things like flour and sugar and salt and any kind of flavorings you prefer to use. It's really important that when you have your pantry stocked, that you keep it stocked. You don't want to run out of any of these essential ingredients while you're in the middle of baking something. And I share all of those with you in the video that is linked in the description below that talks about pantry essentials that you should always have on hand. So check out that video after you're done watching this one, of course. Another thing to consider is that when you are going from a box mix to scratch baking, it's going to require a lot more time and effort. So you have to think ahead. It's things as simple as making sure that your eggs are room temperature and making sure that your milk or your cream is room temperature before you start to work with these ingredients. Additionally, there's extra sifting that may be required. There's extra measuring that may be required, because think about it. When you are using a box mix, all of these ingredients are there and ready for you already. So there's a lot less time involved with that. But if you really want to experiment and get your hands into the process, you are going to have to consider the extra time and effort in doing so. Also, you're using more dishes. You are using your sifter. You're using extra mixing bowls. You're not putting everything into one bowl and just going from there. So again, using more dishes requires more time for cleanup. Just more things to consider. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and consider sharing this with a friend that you also know loves to bake. Subscribe to my channel for more cake decorating tips, tricks, and tutorials. And as always, thanks for watching.